So now, we're once again, if everybody wants to turn to the source of all my good. Okay, so page 40, I believe. Let me just get to it. We're entering now. We're looking at the text called "The Source of All My Good," the foundation of all good qualities, and we're now getting into the section on the training for beings of great capacity. So we find that beginning on page 40. It should be in the books. So we begin the path for beings of great capacity in this section, in this particular stanza rather. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see clearly that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. The tambo, the tambo, senche go, got it.
Tejen jogo sa, tejen jogo, maya na jo. Tejen jogo, senche kuna tembas. Teba chimi jogo to, teba chimi senche kuna res.
Lesso.
Senche kuna ma to jenda yo ma res.
Lesso. Nene nipa?
Nipa de senche da jibi chus. Sen kana segu res.
Okay.
On ma de jibi uro. Sem
gariche, the sem.
Sem jeta jibis, sem kanda sigores, jibisu kanda res. O delma jibin da.
Okay. So when we look at the Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we find this section broken down into two categories. First, that the door to the great vehicle is necessarily the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So this is the first category, that the door to the Mahayana is the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or mind generation.
What the
so okay, so there's actually three categories. Rinpoche is just correcting. I wish I had a third volume. Third volume? Anyway. Second.
Yeah.
Okay. The Sumbo Yanjar Surana?
Shobal Lobsu the Marbeda, and the Raju Meji Pashinto, Jeju Meji, and the doing opposite to the Lama, 6 per passion.
That's so.
Shobal Lobsu, but
the Senche Yana, then they go.
Senche Sadu, and the Shajus and Shobal Law.
Okay.
Shajus and Shoba, 6 per passion, 10 per passion, 6 per passion.
Less.
What the
So just going back to that outline again. So the first category is that the door to the Mahayana is necessarily bodhicitta, or mind generation, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment. The word that's being used is literally mind generation. Thank you very much, Ted. So the only door to the Mahayana is that. The second category is understanding how this actually occurs in the mind. So the second category deals with the various ways in which this mind generation occurs. And then the third category is after this mind generation has occurred, what exactly then does the bodhisattva do? And then we get into the various practices of the 6 perfections and so forth, the various particular practices that come after that. So if we want the exact here, we have showing that developing the spirit for enlightenment or the mind generation is the only entrance into the Mahayana, the only door into the Mahayana. Second, how to develop mind generation. So how does that occur in the mind? And then the third category we'll find it's after the mind generation occurs, then what does the bodhisattva do? So that's the third category. I'll find the exact in here later, but that's the point. Dixon. Dene the ngudu jen yanja surlang the seni.
Tejen yoga senje to what the senje ban the jense yanda du shang chun dus. What the teje tebachimi yoga senje dan wore.
So what does it mean when we look at this first category that it is the only entrance into the Mahayana? If we were to say, posit the entrance into Mahayana, or posit what the entrance into the great vehicle is, then we would answer by saying that the Mahayana mind generation is the actual entrance into the Mahayana. So, and that means the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. That's what that's referring to. So when we look at the Abhisama Alamkara, Lord Maitreya's text, we find the same sentiment that of those wishing for the highest enlightenment first have this mind generation. So we can look at the exact quote, but this mind generation is necessary for those who want this highest enlightenment, referring to Buddhahood. So the Mahayana vehicle must be entered by generating this mind. Dixon.
Teba Chenmo la Jupari Shibi Tibatan, Devasanga Duji Tibani Marba. Teba Chenmo Ni Gang Guru Shujang, Jogu Senji Kunares, Jirmashi, Teba Chenmo Ni Gang Guru Shujang, Pashin Tiba Shuba in Nanda, Kanga Tiba Shuba in Jogu de Senji Kunares. Teaching sensi ban the generation and that was I take a Buddha Damasa. What is Senji Tango? What is the Kunares?
Lesso. Jew part of the symbol and Depo part of the symbol?
Jew part of the symbol, the Pashin table, Jurota, the Latin and Hagel,
Depo, okay.
There was some digital.
So when we look at the Mahayana vehicle itself, we can break it into two separate categories. When we look at it in terms of vehicle, we have the causal perfection vehicle in the Mahayana, and then we have the resultant tantric vehicle in the Mahayana. And in looking at both of those categories, we find the necessity for this mind generation because of it being the entrance into the great vehicle or the Mahayana itself. So it becomes a requirement for either of those causal or resultant vehicles that are found within the Mahayana practices. So the causal perfection vehicle is referring to the perfection of wisdom, and the resultant perfection vehicle is referring to the tantric practices. So when we're speaking of this resultant vehicle, we're speaking of the tantric vehicle that is the result, or a resultant vehicle.
So
the entrance into Tantra is stated in many places is an empowerment.
Teba Chenmo Gang Gushin, Jogu Senji Kuna in Sonduas.
Teba Chenmo Jogu Senji Kuna, okay.
Jogu Senji Kuna in Sonduas, what the Karazana, or the Tubaten.
So, but there is a little doubt that occurs because it states that for either of the Mahayana vehicles, the entrance is necessarily the mind generation, or mind that aspires to enlightenment. But then we find this other source that states that the entrance into the Tantrayana is the actual empowerment. So a doubt arises because we find 2 points being made here. One saying the entrance is the bodhicitta, and then these other points are made regularly that the entrance is this empowerment. So there's a difference. We have to look at the words themselves. If we say, we can make the statement that an empowerment is the entrance into Tantra. But if we say, what is the entrance to the Tantrayana, the tantric vehicle, then we have to say that the entrance to the tantric vehicle itself is mind generation. So entrance into the Tantra is an empowerment, but entrance into the Tantrayana, the tantric vehicle, would necessarily be mind generation. So that's how we would clarify that. Diksung. So this is these are doubts that arise here. So this next category of how do you develop the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or they call it the spirit of enlightenment in here. I have to just get used to that terminology. So how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. So there are 2 practices that can be found that show how one actually develops this spirit of enlightenment. And the first has been passed down through Lord Atisha, and it's called the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So this is the first practice that causes or allows one to develop bodhicitta. And the second is passed down through Master Shantideva, and that is the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. So these are the 2 practices that allow for that development to take place. 6 perfection.
What the London, what the sugar anga jebat ne mate da raju tu bi do nge kaji je do nge ya da se ba kun ne jebat ne chu yin no ne jebat ne chu yin no what je that no whole my bare
Rani Sitsa.
Tene seje tanje la shabi sen anga chuba tene seje tanje la shabi sen ngondu yu na so de jesu ta chibu su ji de nge yu ro ma lu la de de nge jin de nge wa de nge ju sen ro ta ban de ba yi do ba me ba tanje yu sha ju sen je ba sas
London. Okay, London. Okay, so when we look at stanza number 10 in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, I think, let me make sure it is the same one as Rinpoche's reading. Angi Jupa, Dene Sentient.
Dene Sentient Taje La.
Okay.
Shabi Sen Ngonde Ngasu to Chisu Tang. Chibusuji do nge yus.
Leso.
Ane le te do nge jine do nge wa do nge juten le do taban de ba yi do ba me ba tanja yi shanju sen je ba shas.
Leso.
Do taban de ba yi do ba me ba tanja yi shanju sen je ba shas. Adi shay jun la tene Juni mga duju kun senji bi tsude de katu tengo so marwa
de good so do
de tengo sarwa 我的阿弟下用了天呢，门下对如果呢，先去去的阿弟下个老人可不有的是。
Judan, Juchi, Nika, or just Jukuna?
阿弟下用了天呢。绝对门下对这个先去去的，阿弟些用了天呢，是把老人写过了，老人搞不有是呢，按个举办呢，我的举办举几年的人多，我的那个单身呢这个。
Okay. So we find it in these two stanzas, stanza 10 and 11. So when we go back to the mind that aspires to enlightenment or developing the spirit of enlightenment. There's two categories which are practices which create this development. First category is the 7-point cause and effect passed down from Lord Atisha. And if we were to ask, where do we find this point being made or this reference to mind generation? And then we cite the lamp for the path to enlightenment in stanza 10 and 11, where it states, next, beginning with an attitude of love for all living creatures, consider beings excluding none, suffering in the 3 bad rebirths, suffering, birth, death, and so forth. Then, since you want to free these beings from the suffering of pain, from the suffering and the cause of suffering, arouse immutably the resolve to attain enlightenment. So here we find the reference to the practice on stanza 10 and 11.
아디샤 줄라 되는 줄에 나도 요건 생기 추대 안가 줘반 주진이
Lesser.
피지 어떤 저우대 사마르베테.
So then if we were to ask cite where we find Atisha referencing the spirit of enlightenment and the development of it, we would state in the text, the lamp for the path to enlightenment, in stanza 10 and 11, we find the development pointed out. I want to look at it to see if it calls mother sentient beings. I'll do that at break. I just want to look at the Tibetan. So in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, we find this reference to Lord Atisha and states that this practice is found in Lord Atisha's teachings. And if we were then asked again where, we can point it out in the text here. Okay, then Sache. Okay. Okay.
Never say Jibbin Balani, Juji, Rula Tene, Judy Banga Dujukune, Jawantan, Papa Shola, Rula Tene, Dajenya Baji Gune Jons, Tombolani, Rigelang Abajibatan, Rigent Jons, Rigelang Abajibat, the Rigelang Dua, Tarigelang Abajibat, the Wonder Dua, TJ Lange Zawa, TJ Tempadans. 가서 몸을 치서 어떤 데 해들어다. 서 진지 때마다 준비제나 디 주던 대분 주로스. 니. 어떤 말을 다 가데 해지데 대바 재미나지 싸와인스. 라서. 해지 전부 대바 나지 대바 재미 싸와레스. 다 준비 망아도는 맛이 제제 제주 용기 상바 해지 라상. 준비만 뒤에 말이야. 라서. 준비만 뒤에는 해지때 대바 재미 나지 싸와레스. 라서. 해지 대바 재미 나지 싸와레스. 해지때 대바 재미 나지 싸와이던 노드 제래. 디 자원 해진듯. 너 저샤만 거면 노드 제래 디 자원 해진듯. 대바 재미 나지 싸와데 해지 전부 해도 와레스. 디 자원 해진듯. 준비제나데 주던 잡은 주수 성도 마시 전전 전소 용의 샤바시데 현재기 줘. 라서. Lhasan the Saji the Jijing Drebo.
Leso.
What the Julie Juices, what the Rim there.
So looking at this, first going back to the outline of the Lamrim Chenmo, where we find the great capacity teachings being being presented, we find another outline. So we look at the major category, which is training the mind in the stages of the path shared in common with beings, or I'm sorry, it's training the mind in the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. And under that, we have showing the development of the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance to the Mahayana, and then how you develop that spirit of enlightenment. So those are the two categories. And then how the spirit of enlightenment is developed. It says the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise, and then the development of the spirit through 4 conditions, 4 causes, and 4 strengths. And then the next category is the stages of training in the spirit of enlightenment. The stages that one trains in has that major heading, which is the training based on the 7-point cause and effect lineage from Lord Ithaca, and then the training which in the equalizing and exchanging self with others that's been passed down through Master Shantideva. So under the category of the training based on the 7-point cause and effect, we have a major heading called Developing Certainty about the order of the stages. And then first we have A, showing the root of the Mahayana is great compassion, and then B, that how the 6 personal instructions are either causes or effects of compassion. So going to that, this first category, which is showing that the root of the Mahayana is great compassion, we find pointed out again in the Abhisama Alamkara and Lord Maitreya's text, where it says the root of this, and it's referring to the Mahayana, is great compassion. So the de tsawa de ngudujen, de tsawa senche. Ngudujen. Tsawa.
Ngudujen tat tijin senche do teba chibe lanji tsawa. What the senche khatu tengo.
Lanji tsawa senche do.
On hiji teba chibe lanji tsawa.
Lesa. Then ngudujen garik.
Ngudujen do te yejir tat
Chiran de Lama Lobsang. Dodejen, Mahaya.
Dodejen. Ti tsawa hiji do sa.
De tsawa de. Then gar.
Teba chibe lanji tsawa.
De gare. Teba
chimbi lang di tsawa
ninji. Okay, so my mistake in the Mahayana Dodejen. Mahayana
Dodejen, Dode Sutra Alankara.
Mahayana the Mahayana, why am I Dodejen. Dodejen. The
Dode Sutra.
It's the ornament of the Mahayana in English. Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. So in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, it says, this root is great compassion. Or that's, I guess it would be, to change it properly into English. So that's root is great compassion. So that, in that case, is referring to the great vehicle. So that's root is great compassion. So here, we're speaking about the actual development of the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and here we're showing how great compassion is really the root of the Mahayana. So when we look at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment passed down by Lord Ithaca, there are actually 6 causes that are presented and 1 result. And if we look at the actual breakdown of it, they are either stages that are causes for compassion or results of compassion. In this case, it's great compassion. So they're either causes of great compassion or results of great compassion. So this is the order. Recognizing that all sentient beings are our mothers, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, the extraordinary attitude, and then the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. One thing I forgot from before is another quote that represents bodhicitta, and that's the prayer that we do every day. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So here we find the mind that aspires to enlightenment being represented in that prayer. So I forgot it from 2 translations ago, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So in that 7-point cause and effect, that's the aim is to achieve that mind that aspires to enlightenment. We find compassion kind of near the end there. So remembering all, recognizing all sentient beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and love through the force of attraction are all causes for great compassion. The next step in that 7-point instruction is great compassion. So then the steps that come after that are all results of great compassion. So the extraordinary attitude is the step after great compassion, and then the actual bodhicitta, the actual spirit of enlightenment, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we see how it's either a cause for great compassion or a result of great compassion. And then in the Mahayana Sutra Alankara, we find that quote that says, that's root is great compassion, and that is referring to the great vehicle. And here we have Geshe Rinpoche in his outline showing that the root of that Mahayana path or great vehicle is compassion. Diksun Rinpoche. So in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, it says that the great vehicle, its entrance, the great vehicle, its root is great compassion. So why is this? What's the reason for that? Okay. So if we're asked why is compassion the root of the Mahayana, we would state because it has importance in the beginning, it has importance in the middle, and it has importance in the end. So throughout all those phases, great compassion is necessary. Leso. For the Sama Sanjiba, Niji So, why is it that great compassion is the root of the great vehicle? It's the root of the great vehicle because it's important in the beginning, because it's compared to a seed. In order for there to be a sprout, in order for anything to grow, there first has to be a seed. So this is why it's important in the beginning. Its importance in the middle is compared to the water and the light and so forth that are necessary for that seed to grow. So in order for it to prosper, these conditions are necessary. So great compassion is important in the middle in that way that it allows one to proceed. And then in the end, it's important because its result requires it. So Buddhahood isn't possible for there to be a Buddha without this great compassion present. So this ever-present great compassion in a Buddha must be there in order to qualify that being as a Buddha. So it becomes important in the beginning as a seed, it's important in the middle like water and so forth, and sunlight, and then in the end, that result. So the great compassion at the result is similar to the actual sprout that's come up and bared its fruit or flower. So that last stage is compared to the actual flower itself. So the great compassion is compared to the actual flowering itself. Less so the next category of how the other 6 personal instructions are either causes for great compassion or results of great compassion, as we said. So Rinpoche just listed them again, that recognizing all sentient beings as our mothers, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and love through the force of attraction are all causes for great compassion. And then the extraordinary attitude and actual bodhicitta itself are results of great compassion.
One to get Sajil did on the water. Jundi Jena Ti, Jutan, Devin Jusulani, Machine, Shambi Bar, Junjutu dance, Machine didn't young Shambi Bar, Nijabi Judas, Hassan dance, Hajinite, Nijabi Jebus, then do it.
So in the text it says that under the category of how the 6 other personal instructions are either causes or results of great compassion, we find 2 points made. First, how the first 4 personal instructions, recognizing sentient beings as your mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and love through the force of attraction, act as causes of great compassion, and how wholehearted resolve, or it's also called the extraordinary attitude, and bodhicitta, or the spirit of enlightenment, are effects of great compassion. So that's how it reads in the text. Decent.
And Sija Tajirang Maiba Gungurta, and Sija Tajirang Maganes, what they can't Gunguarisana, Sija Tajirang Maiba de Gumbala, and the Rangel Jawal Toma Mavata, Sija Sama Jawal Toma Mavata, Majina, what the Sija Tajirang Maiba de Pita Gunto Samarwa.
So how do we actually practice these steps? So when we look at these stages of recognizing all sentient beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, how do we go through this process? So we begin with this first, because it's the first step, recognizing that sentient beings are our mothers. And we have to familiarize ourselves with the fact that, like ourselves, like we have had beginningless rebirths, all sentient beings have also had beginningless rebirths. So this is where we begin. When we start to think that all sentient beings are our mothers, we have to then think of these beginningless births that we and all sentient beings have also had. So this is how we begin to stabilize this meditation, or to stabilize it, or to gain certainty about this meditation as we use these reasons.
다 랑게 저 하마 요바 랑게 저를 통만 매바데 주생 가르산 당고르스나 안에 나주 나이 저를 통만 요 말에서 저 하마 요아르스 가르스나 오부제 임베시르 네 로던 데바 임베시르 전에 가서 그래 오중어지 임베시르 네 나는 다송고도 다송 종고 온빌로단 랑게를 뜨면서 온중어제다 쉐바젠다 안에 오부제에서 저 하마 요구레스 저 하마 요 따트레스 어디선다고도 당가서 오 파당 세당에서 저 하마 요 따지레스 전에 가서 론도스로 쉐바 메기제바 나이제바 오시제요 어때요서 저 하마 요레스 전에 메고 오보네 예종 오부요 더 오부제에서
Bless you.
Rangil Joe Hamayore, Rangi Joa, Hamatile Hamayote, Hamangama, Toma members,
Bless you.
And Sajan Samaki Toma members.
Bless you.
And Sajan Santama, and the Kujo Hamayote, Obajan Invasion, Login Invasion, Unjunga Invasion, Tatjenda Guru.
Bless you. So, this idea that all sentient beings are our mothers is realized by recognizing that, like ourselves, all sentient beings have had beginningless rebirth. So we have had beginningless rebirth, all sentient beings have had beginningless rebirth. And how do we establish this fact, that there's this beginningless rebirth that we share with all sentient beings? And Dharmakirti in the Pramanavartika Karika points out 3 signs to show this beginningless rebirth. First sign is the sense powers, the second sign is a consciousness, and the third sign is the actual breathing in and out. So where does this breathing in and out come from? It came from previous breathing in and out, and we find this beginningless breathing in and out. Where does the sense power come from? This eye sense power and nose sense power come from? It came from a previous sense power, and we find this beginningless sense powers. And where does the consciousness that we all have? We have this consciousness, or mind. Where does this come from? It came from this previous mind, which came from the previous mind, and then we show this beginninglessness. So then, by using these 3 signs, we are able to establish then our beginningless birth, because we are able to show, when we look at the I, we look at ourselves, we begin to trace back where did this I come from. It came from a previous moment's I, came from a previous moment's I. And when we begin to trace that back, then we're not able to really find a beginning. So we always find there is a previous occurrence that brought about the current arisal. So this is the reasoning why we state that there is this beginningless rebirth, because it's when we trace it back, we aren't able to find one.
근데 아주 쉐바데 밤이 쉐바데 아주 쉐바데로 봐서는 어때래고요 말이에요. 파막 쉐바데 아주 보고 쉐바데고 봐서는 레고 말이에요. 주생 가르스나 안는 파마 쉐제 케바이나 는 보고도 케바이밍가 봐도 왔어. 파마만 케바이나 보고만 케빙가 봐도 파마만 케바를 보고 케바이밍가 왔어. 그럼 쉐바코노 보고 쉐바코노 가만은 봐도는 용어 알았어. what.
So what is one way we could come up with, or a possibility of how consciousness arises? So if we were to say it comes from our parents, then there is an error. There are consequences to that statement, because we then would know what we would possess the same knowledge that our parents possessed, and we find, though, many cases where a parent knows more things than the child, and then there are also cases where the child, or the son or daughter, really, not because I say child, it sounds small. The son or daughter, in other cases, really exceeds the intelligence and level of knowing that the parent does. So we find times where there are parents who are very intelligent, but it doesn't mean that their children are. There might be their children are not intelligent, or their children are intelligent and they aren't intelligent. So we can't say that consciousness is of the same consciousness as the parents because of the excluded or included material that the consciousness has or doesn't have. So these sense powers themselves that we experience came about in the same way from previous sense powers. We can't say that there are our parents' sense powers that we have, just like we can't say that the consciousness came from the parents' consciousness. We have to show, and this is from the last translation, we have to show that the intermediate state's consciousness is actually what brought about the child's consciousness, or the baby's, fetus's consciousness.
So if
we think about things in this way, then we're familiarizing ourselves with the idea that all sentient beings are our mothers. And the word I'm using, familiarizing, is the same word we use, meditation. So you can say we're meditating on that all sentient beings are our mothers. So this is how we do that. This is how we meditate on that. We do by looking at this, what we previously talked about. Looking at this.
Pado kechewa, tama katin kechewa, sungsan tangandwa. Ame jugune yaba nyaba teki toma kechewa marba. Machisa na pukul nebasa kayo marba. Pame omate dinasu pado kechewa, tama kechewa, ji lhatal tangala ruba. Pukul rubu mochigarwa tene katin chebara hesa.
So once we establish that all sentient beings are our mothers, and then the next thing we establish is this memory of their kindness, or remembering their kindness. So our mothers have been kind to us in the 3 stages of our lives. So it says in the beginning, our mothers have been kind because they carried us in their stomachs. So they showed us their kindness there. And then the middle, once we were born, we really had no abilities. We weren't able to do anything. So our mothers were cared for us and were kind to us then. And then later on, when we have to go to school and do all those other things, our mothers are kind to us because they send us to school and make sure all of that happens. So this is how we familiarize ourselves with the kindness of these all sentient beings who have been our mothers. So thinking in this way would be sufficient, no? Okay, so we'll take a short break now. Drinks and cookies. Okay. So now let's go back to the source of all my good. Okay. So now we'll move right on to the next stanza, and we'll go over a little of that. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I am not well trained in the three moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. So if one only has this wish, but does not have these three ethics, three kinds of ethics, three moralities, then Buddhahood cannot be achieved. So now we'll go over those three moralities a little bit. Let's go, Rinpoche. Okay. Sentient.
And then sentient go to do and then goes you don't be sitting. You don't be sitting. Go to do sentient.
So when we are asked what are these three moralities exactly, the three moralities are referring to the ethics of working for the meaning of sentient beings, the ethics of gathering virtue, and let me just find it. It's right here. I had it tabbed off. Right. Gathering virtue, working for sentient beings, Sumbagare. So that, okay. Morality of keeping oneself from committing wrong. So that's the first one. The second one, the morality of working for the welfare of sentient beings, and then the morality of accumulating virtue. So these are the three moralities. So when we speak of the morality of keeping oneself from committing wrong, we're specifically speaking of committing wrong in relation to the Bodhisattva way. But where the morality of keeping oneself from committing wrong in a kind of a broader sense is referring to the three types of vows, the individual liberation vows, the Bodhisattva vows, and then the tantric vows. So we could say that those three types of vows are the morality of keeping oneself from committing wrong.
So
this, the main point to this is an ethics which abandons the self-cherishing attitude. Rang Chenzin.
다 니쇼 도미 주지스나 가서 세제 되게 주지스나 어느 세제 되네 ane nasa yokin sul menjin ya ane neba sul menjin ya ane kala mega tu kala te ya ane senjen lu robo mo je yoro shangju samba suke senjen lu robo mo je yoro wat robo chi be gwat le senjen de ji su jins neba sul menjin ya neba robo je ne menjin ya ane robo mo je yoro senjen le.
So the ethics of working for sentient beings could involve, for instance, helping a sentient being who is hungry by giving them food, or giving them medicine, or helping them in some activity they're unable to do. So this is the morality of working for sentient beings.
Shindu Diji, Shindu, Sis Purpassion, Time Purpassion, Sis Purpassion, water to Shindu, Gawachudu, Sunil.
So the final, the ethics of collecting virtue, the morality of collecting goodness, but it's the Tibetan, is the ethics of collecting virtue refers to engaging in the various types of perfections, the 6 perfections and the 10 perfections. So that's the third type. So the morality of keeping oneself from committing misdeeds, the morality of collecting virtue or accumulating virtue, and then the morality that acts for every sentient being or works. Yeah, that's it. So if we're asked, posit these 3 types of ethics or 3 moralities that are mentioned in the source of all my good, we would say the morality of keeping oneself from committing a misdeed, the morality of working the morality of collecting virtue, or the morality of working for the sake of sentient beings. What does this say? That's a misprint here. So the morality that acts for every sentient being. So in the future we'll go over all of this again and go through it again. So now we're going to end here. See, he thinks that you're having difficulty this evening. He said you guys look like it's hard. That's what he said. Rinpoche said. It looks like it's difficult for you.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm actually really up there today.
Oh yeah? Meaning?
Meaning that it's working for me really well today.
Oh, the class?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The tearing the Shira Yabudu Konsu. The Kong. Okay, so we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayers. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gushapi Derum